By the end of 1862 and the beginning of 1863, the American Civil War had been dragging on for 2 years. And this was a war that people believed in the beginning would be over in 2 or 3 months with very little loss of life. And by now they know those were foolhardy notions. There have been epic battles with casualties in the tens of thousands in a matter of a day or two. Battles that saw the destruction of property and the loss of life on scales that had never been seen before. And people were ready for this war to be over, especially the soldiers who were fighting it. The desertion rate in both the Union, that's the United States, and the Confederate, those are the states that broke away, Army, was around 12 to 13%. And that was really high. Desertion means you just go home without permission, you quit the military, and you don't just get to quit the military, but they did. They were tired of the fighting. They were tired of the suffering. They were tired of not having food. They were tired of not having equipment. By then, the Confederate Army wasn't even able to put boots on their men. So they were tired of it, and they were going home. And a lot of people were pressuring President Lincoln to end this war. They were like, hey, if they want their own country, let them have at it. Now remember, up to this point, for Lincoln and the North, the war was about keeping the United States together as one nation. It didn't have anything to do with ending slavery. He just wanted the war to be over and things to go back to the way that they were. But by now, Lincoln faces a big political choice. He is going to do the one thing that all of history remembers him for. He is going to write the Emancipation Proclamation. And the Emancipation Proclamation just means the end of slavery. Now, Lincoln was going to make the Emancipation Proclamation go into effect as law on January 1st, 1863. He had a number of reasons for writing the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, for one thing, remember, the United States or the Union Army had this anaconda plan for the Confederates. They were going to squeeze in on the Confederacy, blocking off the coastline so that cotton couldn't be sold to Europe. Now, the Confederates had been working really hard since the beginning of the war. They were sending diplomats and their smooth talkers over to Europe to try to convince Europe to buy cotton from them. Now, if Europe would buy cotton from the southern states, first of all, that would mean, hey, the Confederates were a legal nation. And number two, it would drive the southern economy. They were broke without the sale of cotton. Lincoln knows if he makes the war about ending slavery, there is no way Europe will buy that cotton. Slavery had been outlawed in Europe for years and years and years and years by now, and they didn't like it in the southern United States either. So the emancipation would keep Europe from buying cotton from the Confederacy. And here's the other thing. It would ennoble the cause. It would make the Civil War about this lofty object. You're not fighting just to preserve the Union. You are now fighting for the freedom of an enslaved population. And that's a noble cause that men felt was worth fighting for at that time. So when Lincoln writes the Emancipation Proclamation, he didn't free all the slaves. Sometimes people believe that. He didn't make the Emancipation Proclamation apply to the border states. Now, the border states were states like Kentucky and Maryland. Slavery was a big part of their economy, but they didn't secede and join the Confederacy. They were going to stay with the Union and keep their slaves. So Lincoln's not going to free the slaves in the border states with the Emancipation. He's only going to free the slaves in the states of rebellion, which are the Confederate states. And really there, since they didn't recognize Lincoln as their president was Jefferson Davis, the law meant nothing, the act meant nothing to them. But it was a signal and a sign that when this war was over, things were not going to go back to what they were. There was going to be a new birth of freedom in America. Now, Let's go to the Battle of Stones River. The Battle of Stones River, or the Battle of Murfreesboro, is what the Confederates would have called it, and the Union called it the Battle of Stones River, was going to take place on the day that the Emancipation Proclamation would go into effect. And here's what happened. You remember the Union Army had taken control of Nashville right after Donelson, after the Battle of Fort Donelson. Well, the Confederates start piling up troops in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And part of what they're trying to do is protect the supply line. There was a railroad line that came through there, and that's the railroad line that they're using to get what supplies they have to the troops. So they've got to maintain control of that railroad line. So they start putting troops along Murfreesboro, and also they want to protect the rest of Middle Tennessee from the Union. Well, the other thing they really wanted to do was to knock the Union out of Nashville and try to regain control of the state capital. So around the end of December 1862, Lincoln gets word that the Confederates are amassing in Murfreesboro and they might go on the move. And he orders the Union generals in Nashville to meet the Confederates head on. So in late December of 1862, the Union Army starts coming out of Nashville. And they are going to encounter the Confederate troops in Murfreesboro along the Stones River. Now, the first day, there's going to be some fighting, some light skirmishing. And then on the evening of December 30th, as the men are waiting to go into battle, I want to read to you a memory from a soldier who was there, and this is from his diary. And he's going to describe one of the most moving, heart-wrenching moments of the war. He said, just before the tattoo, which is the end of the day, the military bands on each side began their evening music. The still, quiet winter night carried that music to great distance. At every pause on our side, far away could be heard the military bands of the others. And finally, one of the bands started playing Home Sweet Home. And as if by common agreement, all other music stopped. And the bands of both sides, as far as the ear could hear, played the beautiful song, Home Sweet Home, together. So there those two sides were, fighting one another, playing the same bittersweet song at the same time. And the next morning, the Confederate Army is going to launch a surprise attack on the Union on December 31st, 1862. And the fighting is going to go back and forth and back and forth. And eventually, on January 1st, 1863, the Union Army was going to deal a fatal blow to the Confederates. Now, the fighting on both sides was deadly. It was bloody. You can go to the Battle of Stones River and you can see places named by the soldiers where the worst fighting took place. The Slaughter Pen, the Round Forest, Hell's Half Acre, places that were so bitterly fought for. The blood ran in rivers. And when the Battle of Stones River was over, it gave Lincoln a much-needed Union victory, and it gave his Emancipation Proclamation some punch. And when it was over, the Confederate Army would leave Murfreesboro, make their way down the Manchester Pike to Coffee County. And it's here in Coffee County that General Braxton Bragg is going to winter over his troops. 40,000 or so Confederate troops were going to live right here in Coffee County from January to July of 1863. Now, in July of 1863, the Union Army is going to go on the march, and they're going to come to Coffee County to dislodge the Confederates. And so here they came down the Manchester Pike again, the Union Army, toward the end of June 1863. They would encounter Confederate picket lines around Beech Grove. There's going to be a skirmish fought there. They're going to make their way through Shelbyville, Tullahoma, Manchester, and Braxton Bragg was going to move all of his Confederate army out of Coffee County in July of 1863. So in July of 1863, Coffee County fell into Union hands. It only took the Union soldiers a couple of hours to take control of the Manchester courthouse, and they would stay there for the remainder of the war. So there were Confederate and Union soldiers right here in Coffee County. And let me tell you what they left behind. They left behind their ammunition. Look. These are Civil War bullets that I have found. My brother found some of them. These are Civil War bullets found right here in Coffee County. And let me tell you the amazing part of them. I found this one right on top of the ground. And it had been there since 1863. Now these are in perfect shape because they're called drops, which is just what it sounds like. Some soldier dropped these along the way. Here's what else you can find. Found this weekend. These are the fragments of artillery shells that were fired out of cannons and exploded. This is really heavy. Found this in Coffee County. This is a solid shot cannonball that was lodged out of a cannon somewhere around here. This was found by my grandfather a number of years ago in Rutherford County. And this is a shell, a parrot shell, and this would have been full of little bitty balls that when it exploded, those balls would cause all kinds of death and destruction. Here is this was found by my brother this weekend. This is a canister shot, so it would have gone in something like this, only larger, and then when it exploded, these went everywhere. Oh, here's another little Civil War bullet. That, too, I found right on top of the ground. This is something neat I found in Coffee County. This is a bullet mold, or maybe a grape shot mold, we're not really sure. And this is something neat I found in Coffee County. I found this a couple of weeks ago. This is a Colt revolver gun tool that some soldier left behind, probably because it was broken. So I would like to encourage my students, get out and look. You never know what history you will find right here in your hometown, and sometimes it's right on top of the ground.